All right, hello and welcome back to online English class. I hope you guys are doing well today. AP Language and Honors English 3 students and regular English 3 students. Today we are going to be finishing up our work on OTN 1, which is our first goal for the week. All right, whether you are in the Honors, regular, or AP course, you need to make sure that your work outlining your argument in response to the prompt in OTN 1 is completed and submitted to me electronically by Wednesday at 3 p.m. Okay, to clarify, I am not asking you for an email that says you did it. I am asking you for your actual outline. If you just send me an email that says that you did it, you will not get credit for the assignment, and it will also be very clear that you didn't listen to these instructions. All right, so make sure that you send me an electronic copy of your outline responding to OTN 1, okay? Then we're going to begin OTN 2, which we're going to be working on throughout the course of this week, which is about religious freedom. I'll talk through that prompt tomorrow, and we'll be working through that prompt together tomorrow. So if you're in the AP class, you need to make sure that you finish your Unit 6 progress check, all right, which is obviously a free response question, all right, that is going to reflect the kind of prompt that you're going to be working on May 20th on your AP exam, okay? So if you're in the AP class, make sure that you have that date in mind and make sure that you are spending a significant portion of your week thinking about how to most effectively respond to these free response question prompts. All right, then after you complete that by today at 3 p.m., you can begin your Unit 7 progress check. All right, so what do you need to do overall? Well, first I need email confirmation of your reading of Chapter 4 by 3 p.m. today. All right, I need you to complete the Unit 6 progress check if you are in the AP course by 3 p.m. today, and then begin your Unit 7 progress check. I need you to complete OTN 1 and submit your outline by tomorrow at 3 p.m. All right, and then at the on the tail end of the week, I need you to begin your work on OTN 2. All right, so again, it seems like a lot of stuff when it's all listed out, but this takes 5 seconds. All right, this you should already have been working on. You have all week to work on every week. This you should have already completed OTN 1, and then you just need to structure your outline. That's going to take some careful thinking, but we're going to work on that a little bit during this video lecture. And then this is just what you need to be doing in the future. All right. So obviously the big thing is continuing to draft your Quarter 4 essay. All right, your synthetic argument. So whether you're in the honors, regular, or AP class, obviously there are different levels of complexity and quantity of the assignment, but basically you all of you need to be developing a research question, and you need to begin the process of reading the context of that question and then reading arguments about that question and then synthesizing those voices into your own original argument. Okay, so make sure that you're staying on top of that. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump back into OTN 1 and finish our work on this, on these sources, okay? So I've got my copy of OTN 1 here. I've got my work on Winthrop right here. It's pretty messy, okay? Again, it's just me. It's just pre-writing notes, all right? Doesn't need to be perfect. Then I've got my work on Frederick Douglass, and then I've got the last source that I wanted to work on, which was my Ronald Reagan's farewell address work right here, okay? So these are the 3 resources that I'm going to be synthesizing into my argument, and I'm going to be using to complete my outline, all right? So instead of writing my outline on this piece of paper, what I did is I wrote my introduction and central claim here, okay? And likewise, you need to be writing your central claim and then outlining your support for that central claim throughout the course of your argument. Okay, so let's quickly review what it is that this OTN is requiring us to do. All right, the prompt begins with a definition of what a Jeremiad is. All right, And then we get 4 different examples of Jeremiads spoken by leaders who are acting kind of like American prophets, offering unifying standards that will cultivate an ideal world if they are upheld, okay? And also describing the kind of hellish consequences of failing to uphold those ideals, all right? The 4 speakers are obviously Winthrop, Douglas, Reagan, and Obama. All right. Now, all 4 of those speakers come from different periods of American history, different epochs of American history and culture. And so it would follow that there might be differences in the way that they view those foundational ideals, those foundational moral or spiritual commitments that offer unity and cohesion to the American people. So have they changed over time, and what are they? All right, the little visual graphic that I gave you to sort of help you visualize what cognitive task you're trying to perform here is you're thinking about, right, Winthrop's argument, Douglas's argument, Reagan's argument, and Obama's argument, and you're putting them all together to see if there is a point of contact between all of them. Is there a unified vision offered by all of them, or are they all different, illustrating a lack of continuity in the value system of various Americans in various periods of American history? Okay? Well, so in other words, our job is to write an essay that identifies or interprets the unifying American ideals articulated in 3 of these Jeremiads. The 3 that I've chosen are Winthrop, Douglas, and Reagan. You absolutely can do all 4, or you could do Winthrop, Reagan, and Obama, or Douglas, Reagan. You could do any 3. All right, the prompt allows you to offer any 3, and then explain the extent to which these ideals have changed over time. Okay, which means that they could have remained the same. You could argue that there is continuity here, that there is a essential comparison. All right. So we look at our back at our work on Winthrop. Okay, we establish our rhetorical situation. We define what Winthrop is basically trying to do, which is to persuade his audience that they should make obeying God and fulfilling, obeying God's law and upholding their covenant with Him their primary goal in the new world. And if they do that, they will be blessed. And if they don't do that, they will be cursed. Okay. All right. Well, ultimately, right, this offers to us a kind of a vision that Winthrop gives to us of what he thinks America, or what he believes America is for. Right. Winthrop went to America with these early colonists in order to establish and build a Christian church. Okay, so it's not necessarily, right, the sort of post-Enlightenment America that Jefferson idealized in the Declaration of Independence, that was all based around the preservation of the natural inherent rights of all men, regardless of race or class or religious creed. Winthrop would not say that. Winthrop would say, no, the America that I'm trying to build, the colony in the New World that I am trying to build, is for the Christian church. In fact, he outlines that in his speech whenever he describes the work that he's trying to do. The work that he's trying to do is to establish a church and a society that reflect his Christian Protestant beliefs. That's his goal. Okay? So, other Americans that prioritize freedom or liberty over and above Christian worship are different than Winthrop in this way. So this left us with a question at the end of our last class. What, if anything, could Winthrop and the early Christian Puritan settlers of America have in common with the belief systems, with the value system of those that follow them? Well, let's look quickly at Frederick Douglass's argument, okay? Quick establishment of the rhetorical situation. He's obviously speaking in the antebellum period of the American Civil War, all right? Why is he speaking? What's the exigence? Well, slavery's continued existence, which is something that compels Douglass to speak, right? It is diametrically opposed to the value system articulated in the Declaration of Independence and other founding American documents, and he has to speak up about it, right? What's the subject? What is he speaking about? He's talking about the celebration of the 4th of July and what that means to a slave, all right? Who's the speaker? Frederick Douglass, okay? Escaped slave, autodidact, right? A guy who taught himself to read, to write, taught himself rhetoric, and became a prominent abolitionist, all right? Who's he speaking to? Essentially the American people, all right? Essentially the American people. And what is his goal? Well, he's seeking to persuade his audience that the celebration of the 4th of July, when viewed from the perspective of a slave, is an ongoing testimony to America's betrayal of its foundational principles, characterizing the nation as barbaric and in need of radical reform. Okay, so how does he structure his line of reasoning? Well, again, his central claim is that America has betrayed its founding principles, is barbaric, and in need of radical reform. He asserts all of these things through the course of his speech, and he supports these assertions by illustrating the American legal system's simultaneous affirmation and denial of the humanity of the black man. All right, that is unpacked in the sort of first major body paragraph of the speech. He discusses the clear evidence of the black individual's humanity, in which he lists all of the things that black Americans or black individuals, African Americans, are doing that only people do, right? Only human beings do. And then he discusses the self-evident truth that men and women desire liberty. All right, would you have me argue that it is good for a man to be free? That is obviously, according to the reasoning of our own founding documents, self-evident. It's obvious. It is good for a person to be free. And that denying that liberty to an individual is an immoral rejection of God's intentions for his creature. Okay, that is most evident whenever he makes statements like that which is inhumane cannot be divine. All right. So with these evidences in place, Douglass concludes, right, that radical reform, not patient argumentation, is what is needed to remediate the situation and redeem the nation from her barbaric hypocrisy. Okay, so that's essentially what Douglass is arguing, but how does this argument fit into this larger question that we're exploring? After we've read, we need to be able to explain how the source connects to the main idea of the prompt and also compares to the previous source that we've already seen. Okay? Well, let's think through it, right? What is different about Douglass's approach here? Well, his unifying vision of a just or a good society is focused on the abolition of slavery, an institution that legally affirmed the inequality of various races. Okay? So, in other words, follow the reasoning here. Douglass, like Winthrop, is trying to establish a vision for what a good or a just, a righteous society would look like. Douglass is no less interested than Winthrop in cultivating a city on a hill, a just and good society. But his just and good society is not singularly focused on the construction of a Christian church. His just or good society is focused on the abolition of an institution that legally affirms inequality, that stands in the face of the assertions of the equality of all men. Okay, so in this way, what's the big difference? Well, Douglass is a little more secular than Winthrop, and what I mean by that is Winthrop's vision of a just and good society is tightly, precisely focused on the cultivation of a distinctly Christian society. Douglass, on the other hand, is focused on developing a society that protects the rights and the equality of all people, regardless of whether or not they are Christian. Okay? So that's different. Okay? But is there anything similar in these two men's visions or belief systems? Well, Douglas, very much like Winthrop, right? Although his vision of America is seemingly more secular, is no less rooted in his understanding of who God is. He talks about God quite a lot in the speech. And, right, no less rooted in what he believes a man is in light of his theology, in light of his understanding of God, or who is a kind of embodiment of the good or that which is just, right? His vision of the American ideal, similar to Winthrop's, is rooted in his understanding of who God is, or what is good, or what is just, and what a man should be, and what that man's society should be like in light of his theology. That's a similarity. Okay? So to summarize, his unifying ideal, America's a place where the rights and the dignity of all men, regardless of race, should be protected and acknowledged. The fact that they are not is what Douglas is so upset about. Douglas doesn't hate America. Douglas is recognizing or calling attention to the fact that America, if it doesn't live up to its ideals, is not worth loving. Okay? What is the threat? Well, institutionalized betrayal of that equality, like slavery. So, is this the same as Winthrop? Not exactly. Is there any similarity? Well, yes. Both men base their ideal understanding of what America should be like according to their own personal, deeply held belief systems. And those deeply held belief systems they pursue. They attempt to enact. Those deeply personal belief systems, those understandings of who God is and what a human being is in light of their understanding of who God is, even though those understandings are divergent, reflect a kind of deeper similarity. How does this play into Reagan? All right. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to look at Obama because in my argument, I am focusing on these three. All right. So you absolutely could focus on Obama as well, and there's plenty to discuss there. Okay. So in our rhetorical situation here, we are in a very different time. We're not in the antebellum period before this American Civil War. We're in 1989. Okay, so much closer to our own contemporary period. We're at the end of the Reagan presidency. The Cold War has come to an end with the United States as the victor. And the Cold War was primarily an ideological war, pitting American liberalism or American freedom against the USSR's totalitarian communistic governing structures. Okay? So the exigence here, why is Reagan compelled to speak? Well, Reagan's time as leader is coming to an end, and he wants to give some parting advice to the nation as it moves forward, okay? So what's the subject of the speech? Well, this is Reagan's farewell address, all right? These are parting words about how to move forward, okay? So it's a claim of policy. What should we do? How should we go? How should we move forward as a nation? Who is our speaker? Ronald Reagan. He was a Republican president. During the 1980s, he was very, very popular among American conservatives. Okay, who is he speaking to? He is speaking to the American people at large. And why is he speaking? He is seeking to persuade his audience to what he calls reinstitutionalize an unambivalent appreciation of America. Okay, right off the bat, I'm beginning to see, again, I'm always thinking synthetically, I'm beginning to see a kind of pattern in all three of these documents. All three of them seem to be committed to attempting to institutionalize, which is to say, all right, take a belief system and codify it to make it a part of the way that an institution works, all right? To make it, to ingrain it in your society's life by institutionalizing, by instituting it in the social structures, in the systems that organize and orient your life, okay? Your law codes, your educational system, okay? The things that you hold dear. That is called institutionalizing a thing. Winthrop is attempting to institutionalize his belief in, right, Protestant Christianity, just as Douglas is attempting to institutionalize his belief in the equality of all men, which is being ignored by the American government and therefore needs to be altered or abolished. Okay? And here, Reagan is arguing to his audience that they need to reinstitutionalize, to recover an unambivalent, ambivalent just means split, an unsplit, unequivocal, unambivalent appreciation of America. Okay? So, contrary to perhaps the Cultural Revolution that happened at the end of the 1960s and beginning of the 1970s, which began to call into question American foundational values and virtues and expressed itself in things like the hippie movement, which set itself against social norms and established conventions. For example, believing that America was good, all right? The Reagan presidency, largely, one of its dominant themes was recovering that unequivocal belief that America is good, all right? It's not perfect, no one would ever say, but it's good, and it's based on good principles. And it has a good history of attempting to protect them and build them and share them with the world, okay? So, in other words, right, again, more similarities between Douglas, Winthrop, and Reagan just in the ways that they are structuring the purposes of their arguments, okay? So, what is Reagan's basic line of reasoning? Well, in his argument, he essentially argues that the American people need to reinstitutionalize a, quote, unambivalent appreciation of American freedom for the coming generation. He supports this assertion by saying that, number one, times have changed as children no longer are taught directly what it means to be an American. Okay, so it's just kind of his little take on the cultural effects of the 1960s and 1970s, in which it became less normal to teach an individual what it meant to be American, all right, and that was a good thing. Patriotism, he says, is no longer in style. Okay, so again, Reagan doesn't really talk in an uppity or highbrow way. He's very kind of like colloquial. That was his whole style, right? So Craigie wouldn't like it very much, right? But it appealed to the sort of common, everyday, average American. And basically what he's saying here in his own colloquial way is the Cultural Revolution that happened in the 1960s and 70s basically broke down American patriotism. And if we're going to survive, right, we need to turn back time. Times have changed. We need to make America great again. Actually, is a very similar kind of sentiment there, reflected in our own political discourse, okay? He then asserts that freedom is fragile, and if we forget what we have done to obtain and protect it, then we won't know who we are. Okay, so for basic American freedoms like the freedom of speech that he identifies, the freedom of religion, and the freedom of enterprise, all are basic American freedoms that Reagan says are worth protecting and need to be maintained. Okay. And in 3, he argues that America, since its earliest founding, was meant to be a shining city on a hill, where pilgrims seeking freedom are welcome with open arms, and this is something that he just implies is worth protecting and institutionalizing. Okay? So, how does Reagan's argument compare with Winthrop and Douglas? Well, apart from the very obvious comparison of the fact that Reagan alludes to Winthrop and references his language and calls America a shining city on a hill, it's very clear that Reagan's vision of the American promise, while it references Winthrop, is definitely notably different than Winthrop's. Okay, unlike Winthrop, it is not singularly focused on creating a Christian society based on the values and theological premises of Reformed Protestant Christianity. Okay, Ronald Reagan was not a Reformed Protestant Christian. He was kind of loosely Christian. His wife was kind of notoriously weird and wacky in terms of spiritual stuff. He was well liked by Christian individuals and members of coalitions like the Christian Right, but Ronald Reagan himself was much more interested in religious freedom than he was in institutionalizing the theological premises of Reformed Protestant Christianity. Because to institutionalize those premises would stand against American religious freedom, essentially. Okay. So, like Douglas, in this way, Reagan is more secular. Okay, he views America as a place where freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise are foundational values. His city on a hill is a place where seekers of freedom are welcome. The doors are open to everyone, which is a kind of affirmation of the kind of equality at the heart of Douglas's speech. Okay, so on the surface of things, I'm seeing a lot of similarities between Douglas's American ideal and Reagan's American ideal, although the tones of the speech are very different, right? Reagan is like laid back, like happy-go-lucky granddad, and Douglas is like, fire and brimstone about to, blow somebody up, right? Both of them, despite those differences in tone, are essentially similar in their vision of America. But is there anything that ties Reagan to Douglas and Winthrop? Okay. Well, I would say that once again, Reagan's vision, although it's more vague, is still based on his personal understanding of God and his personal beliefs about what a person and what a person's society should be like in light of those beliefs. In other words, very much like Douglas and Winthrop, Reagan is a believer and is exercising those beliefs and attempting to institutionalize them, to build a society that he views as good, to build a society that he views as just. Okay? Now, the definitions of what exactly Winthrop and Douglas and Reagan believe to be good and just are different. But the essential similarity that animates all of their Jeremiads, and I would say animates and is at the core of America's history, America's spirit from the very beginning, is this similar attempt by individuals to attempt or to try and institute or build a society that is a reflection of their own personal views of that which is good, of that which is just, of that which is godly for the religious individual. Okay? That changes over time. But all three speakers reflect a shared pursuit of blessedness, a shared pursuit of an exceptional society that is based on moral premises. Okay? And in that sense, to be American, according to these Jeremiads, according to my reading of these Jeremiads, is more than to be born in a certain place of the world, to speak a certain language, to look a certain way, but rather what it means at its core to be American, as reflected in these documents, is to be free, to believe in your own private heart what is good, what is just, what is godly, regardless of whether that looks like Winthrop's Protestant Reformed Christianity, Douglas's belief in the inherent equality of all races, or Reagan's belief in American liberalism. Regardless of what you believe, the heart of what it means to be American is to pursue freely your individual beliefs and to attempt to institute them in your society. I think this is what, at its core, is meant when Jefferson says that all men, in America, we recognize that all men are created with the inalienable right to freely pursue happiness, to pursue blessedness, to pursue that which they define as the good, the just, the righteous. Okay? So in my essay, I'm going to argue that this is the essential similarity. Right? There are other claims that you could make, but that's the claim that I'm going to make. Doesn't have to be the one that you make, but that's the claim that I'm going to make. All right? So finish your work on OTN 1 and submit your outline to me by 3 p.m. tomorrow. Have a great day.